Welcome to Beyond Distribution with GTDC Podcast. Today's episode was recorded live at our APJ Summit in Singapore. This panel discussion with Frank Vitagliano includes guest panelists Patrick Aronson, CMO and Head of APAC for Westcon Comstore, Luis Lorenzo, SVP and Chief Country Exec for ASEAN and Hong Kong for Ingram Micro, Jaideep Malhotra, President of APAC and Japan for TD SYNNEX, William Ong, Group CEO of the ASEAN and Executive Director for VSTECS, and V.S. Hariharan, Group CEO for Redington Limited. Discussions center on how distributors adapt to shifting market conditions with agility and innovation. They highlighted the evolution of service-based models and how data is becoming central to lifecycle selling. The conversation also delved into how distributors invest in supporting partners and developing proof of concept to help them and customers navigate the AI landscape. A small note that we did experience some sound issues during the panel recording, and some sections may be a little bit more faded out. We hope you enjoyed this very insightful episode. Our next one will come out in early January. Thanks for listening.
So you've been in the industry for quite some time, like many of us. From your perspective, what are the most significant changes in distribution you've seen, perhaps over the past 5 years? If you want to go back a little further, fine, but certainly over the past 5 years, because we've had a lot that's happened. What do you see as the most significant?
I think if you look at today's all the presentation probably covers quite a lot of it. I think from our perspective is that through digital transformation, you can see that the demand for IT consumption, whether it be on consumer side devices or infrastructure, has increased a lot over the last 5 to 10 years, and we of course have benefited from it. And I guess through the cost of doing business, and of course especially labor costs, our role as distributor probably has actually increased as well with the vendors. I think at the moment we're probably a kind of a extended arm of a lot of our vendors, a lot of activities, not just we do a lot, and of course we're doing more and more, especially on the pre-sale, post-sale services, you name it, right? Even technical support, we're doing a lot more. So I think the last 5 years or so, I think this is becoming more and more transparent, yeah. And it's great for us, I guess, as a business. So,
yeah, and I think the pace of change and the acceleration is, personally for me, seems faster than I've ever seen it before. Right. One of the things we try to do, by the way, unlike some of the other panels you may have seen or participated in, is we generally don't ask the same question to all 5 people, because by the time it gets to the third person, in some cases, there's nothing more to say, right? However, what I would do is I would encourage any of the participants to add on anything that you feel is appropriate, as part of any of the questions, right? But
I think, Frank, if I may,
yeah.
I think if you look, we have actually transformed a lot, as I said just now.
Yeah.
And I think as distributor, we probably have to keep on learning from each other, learning from the vendors as well, learning from the market,
yep.
Listening to the market, and then transform even more. We have to make ourselves. Of course, we have a lot of supporters here, IDC, Larry as well, and yourself, talking about how important distributor is. Yep. I guess we have to continue to evolve and to make it more significant to the whole market, to the whole ecosystem as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, from my standpoint, and obviously I'm a little biased now, but I wasn't really biased then when I was in the vendor community, and even when I was a distribution customer. I think the transformation that you all have made, and you've had to make it to stay up to speed with what the requirements were, it's been amazing. And what's amazing to me is you make it on top of running a business that's hard to run, right? I mean, we're not talking about running a business with 18, 20, 30% margin. We're talking about running a business that, that can't afford a lot of mistakes and can't afford bad investments, right? That's a key piece. So
I think just that question, that was a topic that came up yesterday in our, we were all
Yeah.
together having our own session. And then it's come up regularly throughout, I think, some of the discussions today. And that is the abilities of the distributor's ability to transform. And I'm not as long in the industry as others, maybe just about 10, 12 years. But I think there is no other player in the entire ecosystem that has the capacity to pivot and is as agile as the distributor. And that is because, yes, we are forced to by the economics. So you need to be constantly prepared and ready to pivot. Also, we don't have the baggage of IP, right? Like we don't really carry many assets. So we have processes and people, and that's fundamentally what we do. Of course, we have some platforms that we're developing, but generally speaking, we have a lot of agility, and it allows us to pivot. And we're constantly living in threat because we live on such thin margins, so to speak. I'm not trying to complain about that, but if you want to hear me, well, but we live on thin margins, and so we have to constantly be on the lookout, constantly paranoid, constantly aware of how the wind is blowing, where the next threat is coming, and then ready to pick up and move to the next place. Vendors are attached to their IP and their R&D. Partners tend to be attached to their specific customers, whereas we are constantly moving and pivoting and aware of where it's going. And I think, distributors go away. Typically, they go away through consolidation. They get acquired and they get bigger and bigger. But for the most part, distributors have survived, and I think they will continue to survive because they're the most agile, capable of pivoting member of the entire channel ecosystem.
yeah, well, we certainly saw that in the pandemic, right? I mean, overnight, distribution took all of the people out of the offices, put them home, work from home, kept the mission critical warehouse functions going, of course, tied to what we could or couldn't do. That was allowed, but it was an incredible transformation. I mean, it was absolutely, and by the way, at the same time, helped enable the rest of the industry keep going. So we saw that. So let me go to question, Harry, for you. As we close out 24, and we're getting there, and we're planning for 25 and beyond, and there's obviously a lot of factors, not the least of which is some of which we talked about today with new administration coming into the U.S., et cetera. What are some of the considerations that you're factoring into your business, and kind of what are you thinking about as you plan for 25 and beyond?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Well, thanks to be part of GTDC and interacting with a lot of you. It's good to be here. Let's give a little bit of perspective. The geographies and the businesses Redington has been in, we've grown 15% for the last 17 years, compounded annual growth rate. So it's always a very challenging question. What do we invest? What do we look at next year and the next 3 years? Clearly, there are so many priorities and so many things coming our way. So there are 3 dimensions I'll talk about. Firstly, the geography dimension. Clearly, markets like India, UAE, and KSA that we are in Saudi Arabia are all fast-growing geographies. So we'll obviously, while we can hear me out. While we will continue to play very strongly in these growth geographies, there are many new geographies we are looking at, smaller geographies like South Africa. We're looking at ASEAN, we're looking at Central Asia, in addition to the markets we are in already, the challenge markets like Africa and Turkey. So some of the considerations will be obviously the change in the US administration, the impact of the global economy, and where should we put our dollars in. That will be one consideration, one dimension. Business topics, business types we are in will be another consideration. Mobility is still growing double-digit in our markets. Last year was double-digit. This year, so far, the first half is double-digit. So while cloud and AI will be important, we can't take our eyes off the fact that mobility is growing double-digit. PCs are growing high single-digit. AI, PC refresh, the Windows 10 to 11 refresh, all of those will be critical. So we have to really balance out between our portfolio to look at where we invest. The software subscription business is nearly 10-12% of our business now. And we are still not doing enough on SaaS. We have invested with the hyperscalers. We have invested on the platform as a service. So clearly that area is growing, and that'll be an area we will look at in 2026 and beyond. Creation of marketplace we talked about. We are very interested in that. And the brands that we work with, the commitments we have made to the brands on joint business plans and priorities and initiatives will clearly be another area we'll continue to invest on. So I would say it'll be obviously clearly cloud and AI will be an area we will look at very strongly, but we'll have to balance out because growth comes from core business very strongly in our markets. Growth comes from the core geographies we are in. So we'll have to keep looking at everything and balance out our investments and thinking.
Yeah, and on top of all of that, you're making the investments, and we talked earlier about in platforms and services and doing the other really transformational things that have to get done, beyond just what used to be the standard, sort of investments in, what's the next phase of the products that we have to support, et cetera. So it's a pretty daunting task. The other thing that's happening, Patrick, is over the last couple of decades, probably the last decade more than anything, the industry's evolved based on the way customers want to buy. And so, we've transitioned from, the fairly traditional model. Larry had the slide up there that was pretty traditional, to now, everything as a service, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service. And frankly, that's resulted in the distributors having to figure out a different way to support that, right? And what makes it even more complicated from my standpoint is you got to almost support it vendor by vendor. And every vendor has got a slightly different version of what they're doing, whether it's, what HPE is doing with GreenLake or et cetera. Talk to me a little bit about that and your thoughts about how that's playing out and some of the implications.
Sure. Well, firstly, I just on the vendor by vendor part, I think that's just comes with the territory and distribution. You've just got to figure out whether you're talking about traditional resale or you're talking about everything as a service. Every vendor is going to have their own tools, their own methods and approaches. And to be a good distributor, it's fundamental. You just got to figure out how to make that work and make it easy for your partners, right? So that you take away that pain and the burden. I think that's like 101, Disty 101. Yeah. But as far as just the general pivot to selling as a service, I think one of the themes, again, that's come out through today, and I know talking with my counterparts, where we're putting a lot of emphasis is around data. So fundamentally, when you think about the move from a traditional land and renew model into the land, adopt, expand, renew, and the whole life cycle selling motion, it becomes fundamentally data-driven. And I think what everybody's beginning to realize is that distribution actually sits at the crossroads of data. We have a broad line cards of vendors, partners behind us, and a universe of channel partners in front of us, and all of that information and data flows through us. And all of us are in the process of understanding how we can use that data effectively to help drive those life cycle selling motions. The land, the adopt, expand, renew, whatever part of the sales cycle each specific partner and customer are going through, how we can help drive and enable that. I think one of the challenges that vendors face with partners is they feel that they are the biggest laggard in driving the conversion to everything, to subscriptions and as a service. And they're constantly frustrated. They think they're ready. They think they've got their products ready. They've got multi-tenanted, it's SaaS, it's cloud. They've done all this stuff. But then when they try to go to market, they feel the partners aren't able to make that jump and make that transition. So distribution, again, becomes a big enabler for partners to do that, either by leveraging our data to help them understand the selling cycle more effectively, or taking them down that path to understand how they manage the cash flow, or how they can make that transition, how they can train and enable their people. So those are all things that we're involved with in one capacity or another. We were talking during the break about your slide where you showed what you think is the future, and I said that one big one that I thought was critical was the role that distribution plays in marketing. And that came up in Larry's presentation as well. But I think more and more, and I'm the CMO of the companies, I'm I'm not saying this just because I have that additional role, but I truly believe, I think I got the job because I kept talking about how important marketing was. I didn't want it, by the way. I didn't get a second paycheck. It just got thrown on top. But that's distribution, right? Multitasking. But, I think that as we go forward, marketing is definitely more important than sales in the distribution world, in my view. Because fundamentally, we don't actually sell that much in distribution, right? We don't sit with customers and talk about what are their business problems and how our technologies are going to drive those outcomes. I mean, that's done by vendor salespeople and hopefully by some of our solution providers, as you call them. We help enable that transaction. We manage revenue. We manage forecasts. We do a lot of the stuff sales do, but we don't typically have those discussions. But certainly our vendors come to us and talk to us about managing a patch, driving a business, creating disty-led, channel-led, disty-managed partners, long tail, blah, blah, blah. We all know the whole story. Everybody hears it. That's what's expected from us. That's all data-driven, marketing-led stuff. And for us to do this effectively, that's where we've got to really step up our game. So I think we're getting there with our data. I think we're building the marketing skills in our organizations to drive that value. And I think that's really also then fit that into that whole life cycle selling motion. That's what's going to drive, I think, disty value in the new world.
Yeah, I think, the point about the as a service having major impacts, I lived a little bit of it when I was a solution provider executive. And I have to tell you, figuring out the cash flow and figuring out how I was going to run the business when we moved from a traditional, I pay you, or we get product from a distributor or from a vendor to the distributor. Customer pays me, I pay and then this is what's left to a 1/36th of a payment, on a 3-year deal. It was a major transition, and frankly, at the time, I relied quite heavily on my distributor to help me with the cash flow scenarios, and particularly in the managed service environment. In the managed service environment, for me to make an investment, I had a lot of AR out there that wasn't realized, that I had to figure out how to make it, work. And all of you were doing that, I know, but I think it's underestimated in the marketplace. It's not underestimated by your customers for sure, but I do think it's underestimated by the rest of the folks in the ecosystem.
It's a transition problem.
Yeah.
So I think if you start off and you build a business as an MSP or as a pure service provider, it's much more feasible. You can actually do that more effectively. But if you've got an existing business that's traditionally resale and you begin to transition it, you run into these challenges because of the way that your business has been established and getting through that. And that's why almost all of our partners are in some stage of the transition. And it's been going on for years, right? They started off as pure VARs and resellers or SIs, and now they're moving towards a service, but they're not going, it's not a black and white thing. It's a slow process that they're going through.
Yeah.
I think we're going through it too. So.
Yeah. So, Jaideep, there's been a lot of discussion, as there should be, about AI over the last, couple of days. One of the things that we really haven't talked that much about is the role that distribution can play in helping to accelerate, AI. So whether it's, training your partners, whether it's, helping with services and support capabilities, or even working through the vendors. Talk to me about some of the things that you've seen, and I certainly know that, your company is doing a lot with AR implementation guides, et cetera. Talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Jaideep. I run TD-SYNNEX and Tech Data in the region. Now, I'll start by tying the first two questions. I think what has happened in the last 5 years is distributors' role has become all about reducing the complexity for our partners. Because of the pace of change and the way technology is being consumed, I think distributors had to really shift to really take the complexity out of our partners' business. And now, if I look at AI, it's the same issue again. AI, as Avnish was talking about, huge opportunity, but 90% of the folks in the partner community, including distributors, will not know where to start, will not know how to go about it. Right? And this is where distribution role has changed over the last 5 years, that we have to step up and be more forward-looking and investing and helping our partners to get onto the journey. Now, we have learned over the last 5 years, when the market went to cloud, security accelerated, data practices became prevalent, that you have to lead with practice building. You have to lead with enablement of your workforce, because there is definitely skill gaps. The technology is changing so fast that nobody can catch up. And that is where the orchestration comes into play. That we have to work as ecosystem to be able to land a new technology, adopt a new technology, and help our partners really get onto the journey. Now, obviously, there are cases where you can say, where is the return on AI? 90% of AI is in trial mode today. Only 10% of the enterprises are really seeing benefit. But we can't wait and watch. I think distribution has to step up and invest with our partners to be able to take them on the journey. With that in mind, TD SYNNEX and Tech Data has launched Destination AI, which is a framework which enables myriads of partners, whoever they might be. Some are at different maturity, and some are starting, to be able to become aware. We help them get enabled through training, certifications, building solution cases, use cases, pre-sales, post-sales. So it's a journey. And I think that is a big role of distribution today. If we do not help our ecosystem with whatever resources we have, and if we are not forward-looking, I think the role becomes, again, logistics, fulfillment, finance, and things like that. So on top of that, it's distributors who are doing that.
Yeah.
We are taking them on a journey, helping them with the skills gap, help them with prepackaged solutions, orchestrate services which enable them to land POCs and verify the use cases. So that's how we think about AI at TD SYNNEX.
Yeah, and it makes sense. And it's the next level. Frankly, it's, as I said earlier, it's the and, right? It's the and that keeps building on what you all have been able to do over the years, and it makes sense, and it's needed in the industry, frankly. So, Luis, I bet you thought we were never going to get to you. You probably were sitting there saying, "Geez, do I get a chance to get a question?" No, we're waiting for lunch. So, I talked a little bit about platforms, right, and how important I think they are, right, and I know I didn't do it justice. Because I don't live it every day like you all do in terms of, what you're building and why you're building it. But just talk a little bit about, from your viewpoint, how important they are and some of the things that you're seeing relative to what matters to both your customers and your vendors and ultimately to end users, right? Talk a little bit about that.
So good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for the time for being with us today. So I'm Luis. I lead Southeast Asia and Hong Kong, Macau for Ingram, and I'm based here in Singapore. So picking up your question, right, Frank? So I think that every industry and business, is being platform redefined, right? So, and I think that our business as a distributor is not different in the sense of a way. So in one side, we have vendors that in big scheme of things, and I like to put things always in a context that is very simple. Vendors want us to scale, right? They want us to have more reach, more partners, more breadth, right? And at the same time, in the other side, we have the partners ecosystem, the resellers, that want to come with us and to help them to grow profitable, right? So in the end of the day, and if you pick up Ingram as an example in this platformization journey, if we can call that way, I think that we have been investing in the past 2 to 3 years massively on it. So globally, we start to develop our platform called Xvantage, single pane of glass that can bring all the value that a distributor does on the traditional physical manual world to a digital one. So now imagine that you want to do this globally, regional, country level, and how you scale it, right? Because in the end of the day, our business depends on people and processes attached with it. So it's very challenging for you to scale without a platform behind. So Xvantage is a single pane of glass of what we do in our daily business in a digital content, right? So quote to order, pricing and discount, configuration and pre-sale support, services and professional offers, marketing, lead gen. Then it can be even lead gen in the sense of a way that today we see it as a partner, but we can start to do lead gen for partners and vendors from a customer standpoint. That doesn't mean distributor stated, right, is going to be doing business directly. That's not the essence of our business, and that will not change. But we will become a way of build new businesses for our partner ecosystem that is a context of resellers and vendors. Another thing is financial services, right? As you can embed in different markets, different types of offers. But one thing that I really like to use, and I think that it's something that we that are in the distribution for a long period of time as a challenge, is the following. Think as a vendor. Today you have technology A, okay? And suddenly, after 12 months, 36 months, you develop a technology B that is going to replace technology A, right? The time to market that the vendor takes to do that, directly or indirectly, it's normally months. So when you become a platform company driven by data, right, you start to minimize the time of deploying all of this. Because think, you can go to our Xvantage platform, and ours is not as different probably of all our partners here on the stage, right? All competitors, right? So friendly competitors.
You can use that word. It's okay.
So with that said, right, think with a platform base, at a click of a button, you go there and take, hey, what Ingram have done in terms of pipeline in the past 3 months of around this technology, and how I pick that up and immediately promote a new technology being deployed at that partner level, at that customer level. And you can have training, enable, and so on and so forth. Of course, that all of this is powered by human intelligence with AI. You cannot do that without the people. So still we have built around 100 plus AI models, internally developed, own patent, that is going to enable us to scale this in a different way, right? So I think it's a journey. We are still at the beginning of it. I like your slide when you put the time of it, right? You put that 3 big eras since the 30s, right? And I think that I'm very, very happy to see all of us going through that, right? But it's being amazing, let's say, doing something new that is really disrupting our business.
At a very small price, you can have that slide. In fact, by participating today in the panel, it's yours. Jaideep, let me go back to you. Question regarding something that we've kind of talked about peripherally, but we really didn't get into it very much today, and that's hyperscalers. So obviously, they've had a profound impact on what's happened, and they're very important, in the marketplace. But I think the collaboration and the partnerships that have been starting to get established between distributors and hyperscalers are really critical. And I think if done properly, will really benefit the entire ecosystem, whether it's the solution providers or the vendors, as we move forward. Initially, a lot of people were a little bit confused as to, how's this going to play out? Is it completely competitive? Is it complementary? Is it a little bit of both? Interested in your view and what you think about, how this is playing out and what else you'd like to see.
First of all, I'd like to echo what you said. I think hyperscalers have had profound impact on our industry and digital transformation. And the last 5 years, one of the big things. And very pleased that they're working with the distribution and see distribution as a bridge to reach more customers, new markets, and we are seeing that now. Having said that, this relationship is evolving between hyperscalers, distributors, and the ecosystem. But it's moving in the right direction. I think if you look at the stakeholders that you're talking about in this motion, obviously there's an end customer, there is solution provider, there's vendor like Hyperscaler, and then obviously distributors. I think where this all is going is, I think everybody's settled. There's going to be a hybrid cloud, multi-cloud environment. I think everybody's at peace with that. Right. Given that, in distribution, all of us are pretty settled that the hyperscale motion will be multi-cloud for us. And we can't ignore one or the other. Yep. So it's very clear. And I think the same is happening at the solution provider level. Now, obviously, within the ecosystem, the vendors, traditional vendors, are also thinking, how do they use that hyperscaler motion for consumption of their software? Right? So again, it is becoming complex. And to solve that complexity, we believe the ultimate thing would be a platform, a marketplace, where you can orchestrate at nth tier different combinations, solutions, and ecosystem combinations to be able to deliver a digital experience for the end customer from a consumption point of view. Yep. And I think the hyperscalers are, I would not say forcing, but they are cajoling us to move towards that. I think marketplaces will become really, really important for the hyperscaler motion. And with the way we all talked about how many different entities or personas are touching a solution, I think it'll manifest itself in the marketplace. And so the marketplaces have to have that capability to be able to do a white label storefront, to be able to integrate PSAs, professional services. Because the future or the partner of the future is somebody who will do more services, will have multiple touch points in the ecosystem, and is most likely to have various consumption models and be digital. So I think that is what hyperscalers have brought to the table, and distributors are adopting to that.
Yeah, if I can just make one comment on that. We've been distributing at Westcon hyperscaler solutions for a long time, from when they first got started in this in the early days, before it was very clear. One observation I made, which I think it's worth noting, the fundamental concept of the hyperscalers is don't make money selling my solution. Make money selling your specialization wrapped around my solution. That's fundamentally what it is, right? And of course, now as the hyperscalers are adopting more, and I'm thinking AWS, who's in the room today and who we partner with very closely, but Microsoft's slightly different because they come from a different background. But certainly with AWS and GCP is just like early on the journey, frankly, from what I can tell. But it's, do what you do best. Be a specialist, be a service provider, wrap it around AWS, and then I'll help you to grow, and I'll provide you money in different ways for you to be successful. Just keep using my infrastructure. That's kind of the concept. And as a distributor, that's something that we've had to adapt to. I'm not to say we don't do services, but fundamentally we're in the business of transacting, selling, making a margin, right? And now we're seeing, actually, we've got to think differently about this. So it's driving us even further down that services path. It's bringing all of our other vendor solutions. At Westcon, we do a lot of cybersecurity, wrapping that into it, and then sort of putting that solution out to the channel partners and showing them how they can make money and profit. So slightly different motion, but it's pretty exciting, and it's really progressing and picking up steam.
And one of the things that I talked about earlier, obviously, was services. And that was one of the big factors that I think over the next 3 to 5 years. And Harry, let me ask you this. As you think about it from your standpoint, obviously, in addition to all the other investments that you need to make, which you're thinking about and we've talked about, services become a big part of it. Well, how are you thinking about that? And what areas are you thinking really need to, need attention?
So we made some modest investments over the last few years on services, specific areas like migration, modernization, a little bit of FinOps, DevOps. Obviously, our goal is to build competencies in-house, and these competencies are built in a way that we can actually train our partners, our channel partners, to actually be successful. So that's the whole idea. But as we build this, there's a whole lot of things that is needed. One is we need to have a marketplace that has been talked about. We need to have a platform. We need to have a training academy. We need to be able to do this replication bit very successfully, both with the new service providers as well as the existing resellers who know how to do hardware and hardware services, but transition to that journey. And that's where it'll be challenging, because the existing hardware providers are the ones, so resellers are the ones who have the relationship with the customer. How do I bring them along with it in the journey? And how do I make sure that I'm building these competencies not to compete with the channel, but actually complementing and training them? So I think we've made some modest investments and good progress there. Again, the cost of these people, the services will become an important thing. Right now, we built this delivery team in India. If I build this delivery team in other places which are more expensive, it'll cost us money. So we need to think about, should I have a back-end delivery team, and how do I deliver these services, and what can I afford as a distributor? Sure. So all these will be tricky questions. Again, I think we are on the journey.
Yeah, and how much of that is variable versus fixed cost, and and how much can you rely on managing the bench? Having run a services business for a while, that'll eat you up if you don't do it right. I remember years ago when IBM first got into the services business, it was not a good business for them for a while because they didn't know how to manage the bench. And, all of a sudden you got utilization rates of, 25, 30% when you needed it to be 75, 80 to, make a profit. So, it becomes a big deal. Let me switch, William, to kind of looking out at your customers a little bit from the standpoint of, what are you hearing, right? As we're ending 24 and heading into 25, what are you hearing from them? Do they feel good about what's happening in the market? Are they nervous? Are they worried? Are they concerned about, we talked about the evolution of AI, and we talked about maybe, AI PCs not coming as quickly as people thought they might. What are your customers telling you?
I think in general it's very good, but if you look at the whole IT landscape now, it's a complex world, and it's quite scary as well, with cybersecurity requirement. Of course, with all these AI we're embarking on now, I think a lot of people that we talk to don't necessarily understand how to actually kickstart. I know, in the room today, there are a lot of AI infrastructure as well as solutions provider. And I think what we need is probably, as a distributor, to be able to showcase what the capabilities are, and maybe have a kind of AI testing centers that these people can actually come and try it out and embark on, because it's not easy and it's very, very expensive. So how do we actually empower them to actually do that? Yeah. I think overall we're quite excited about this AI journey. I think, Avnish, just now you had a slide that runs into trillion. I have to pull out my smartphone and see how many zero there are behind that. But I think the future is good. What we hope is that there will be a lot more AI use cases, AI solutions that we can actually bring to the market. Yeah. Maybe solutions that all of us sitting here cannot actually imagine at this moment in time. If we can, we will probably go and develop it straight away. Right. But something that will probably help the whole ecosystem. But I think the key is to really try and help the customers, our partners, to be able to embark on this journey. Yeah. But it's exciting. Whether it's the AI infrastructure or AI devices, the future looks pretty bright.
Allow me to add. So at TD SYNNEX, every year we do a survey of our partner set, which is quite large, and we call it Direction of Technologies Report.
Yep.
And the purpose is to really find out and feedback from the customers as to what are they seeing. So in this year's report, which just came out a month ago, 36% of our partner set is saying, I want to invest in AI and AI-related solutions. 82% of all the partner set said that I have been involved in some kind of POC around an AI, right? But the top 3 technologies that they are saying they continue to bank on as their future, which is next 2 years, is cybersecurity, endpoint devices, still relevant, infrastructure in Asia, this is APJ, infrastructure, and of course AI. So I think next 2 years, there's a lot of demand in this region around these technologies for us to go solve problems for them, right?
Yeah.
So I just want to share that with the group.
Yeah, and I read that survey. I think it's the 3rd time you guys have done it now, and it's excellent. But one of the things that strikes me is, the partners get excited when there's an opportunity for margin, and there isn't any better place for margin than in services and services support kinds of deals, right? Over the years, we've all been through it, some more than others. There used to be margins in a box, but that doesn't exist very much anymore, right? It's all around the box. And as they transition their model to more services, whether it's professional or managed, that's where it gets exciting for them, right? And frankly, they don't want to get left behind either, because a lot of them are worried that I better make the investment and I better make it, quickly. Okay, we're kind of winding down. 2 more questions. Patrick, one for you, and I know you could very eloquently speak for the group, and that is, so clearly with all the good things we're talking about, there are still challenges that distribution faces on a regular basis, What's your view on some of the things that the vendor community can help you with relative to the challenges that distributors are, dealing with?
Well, I guess fundamentally, it sort of relates to the mission of GTDC. And I didn't prepare anything on this question, so I'm just going with this now. So give me some credit on this one, okay?
Maybe I read the wrong question.
Yeah, no, it's no.
I don't know.
I didn't think we'd get to my second question. No.
Yeah,
But truly, as far as the mission of GTDC, which is appreciating and understanding the value of distribution, right? And making sure that we have advocates within the vendor community who speak and understand what distribution does, what the realities of our business model, what our challenges are, and why we need to be recognized and compensated for the work that we do. We are absolutely willing to continue to invest and plow profits or gross margin, let me say that, into future investment for your future growth. There is years and years of history of that, right? We don't just pocket all the money and run off with it. We continue to invest for the future. But we need the vendors to continue to realize that in order to make those investments, in order to build these competencies, in order to prepare our partners and your channel for the future you envision, we need to be able to have that money to invest. So we just having those type of advocates speaking to the other stakeholders within your vendor land, or giving us a chance and presenting us to maybe people who don't really understand distribution. We're competent and we're capable of having meaningful discussions with those people so they can hear directly from us about what we do and what our value is. Open those doors for us. Give us that opportunity. I'm confident that if we get in front of those folks, they'll appreciate and value and appreciate what we do. Maybe we'll open their eyes up to some things they hadn't considered. So I know the people in this room appreciate distribution, or you guys wouldn't be here today, right? And I appreciate that. But giving us access to your colleagues and others who maybe don't have that understanding, it's an opportunity. And we're happy to come and do that. And that enables more success for us together, and I think for your vendor's business, because distribution isn't going away. You saw the numbers. In this part of the world, distribution, everything runs through distribution for the most part, right? So let us help you be successful in your role and help us make successful so we can keep investing. I think that's my ask.
Yeah, one of these panels that I've done over the last couple of years, one of the distributor executives probably said it best. He said, the worst thing I can hear from anybody out here is, I didn't know you did that. And that's a really, really important point. And it's easy to not know that one of these companies are now doing something that you didn't think they were doing or didn't know they were doing, because the evolution's happening so fast and the requirements for them to react to it are happening so fast. So similar to that, it would be, if you haven't spent the time and if you don't understand, get in a room, have the discussions, have the conversations, ask the questions. And for the most part, even if it's not a standard service or a standard practice, they'll probably figure out how to do it to support you, right? It'll become a custom deal.
I'll just add one point to what Patrick said. I think you represented all of us very well said. I'll just say one more thing to our vendor partners. I think please continue to invest in distribution, because it is so important to have technically and financially sound ecosystem for all of us to progress together. When I say technically sound, that means skills, and financially sound means capacity and ability to scale up. So that would be my message. Continue to invest in us in distribution, because that yields results from a capability point of view and the financial soundness of the ecosystem.
Yeah. So one last question.
And if I might add on to that as well, I think we're more than happy to kind of co-invest with the vendors as well. I think if you look at what all of us have been doing, it's not always just about the P&L. It's not just always about the profitability. We also look to long term as well, like what Patrick was saying just now. We are more than happy to invest all the profit that we actually have to actually drive that long-term growth and that long-term sustainable growth as well. So do co-invest with us as well. So we're more than happy to do that too.
Yeah. So Luis, I'm going to give you the last word on two fronts. One, anything you wanted to add to that, but also I had a question for you regarding sustainability. We talked a little bit about it, and we talked a little bit about the ESG initiatives, and perhaps you might see, based on the new administration in the U.S., maybe a little less focus. I can promise you there won't be less focus in Europe, right? In Europe, there's significant focus, which seems to continue. And certainly, Ingram has been very involved in sustainability initiatives because it matters to, your vendors and your partners. Talk to me a little bit about your thoughts there, and then, of course, add anything you'd like onto the other question.
I'm last one between the question.
You are. Absolutely.
Okay, good. So I'll make this quick and fast, right? No, so thanks for the question, and Frank. So sustainability, it's at the core of the corporate strategies of our companies here. And if I need to simplify it in just a sentence, I think it's the right way of doing business, right? So if you pick several pillars around ESG sustainability, right, and you see what our companies are doing around it, you pick up as an example, right, the environmental side. We make sure that we have a commitment on targets to reduce energy as we consume today in our business, and how we release less gas emissions, right? And this is targets that we have internally as a company. Another one is a pillar around supply chain and sourcing, okay? So we evaluate and we understand the code of conduct of our vendors and our supplier ecosystem. At the same time, one that is fundamental, mainly for the vendors here that have hardware, physical products, is where you source minerals, right? And making sure that you source it from free conflict zone. It's key for all of us. All of you read news, right? And you know what I mean about it. The other is social engagement, right? Making sure that in the end of the day we have safe environments with diversity and inclusion, that our people and our organizations are giving back to communities. Of smart technology, like for us in the industry that we are, it's something that can be at the core of our operations, right? And as you use more cloud-based, as you use more IoT virtualization, help us to reduce energy consumption in a way and to use more friendly energy approach. I think latest but not the least, and I'm trying to resume here, is transparency, right? And transparency, you can, as an example, enter in ingromicro.com website. You go to the link ESG and you see our report where we have more than 100 pages where we explain our strategy, our commitment, our goals, targets, and how we are executing it, right? Some things we are doing better than others, and that's normal in a journey, right? So that transparency allows to you to know that you are doing business with companies that think on doing business in the right way. And of course, in the other side, you can monetize it too, right? We offer ITAD services around IT asset disposition, right? And you can see the journey of the life cycle of an IT product inside the customer, and you can help our partner ecosystem how to leverage and monetize that. But I go again for the first principle. I think that all starts that we are all doing business in the right way, and that's the most important thing on doing business.
Excellent. Harry?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm quite passionate about sustainability, and we did talk a little bit about it yesterday. 70% of the world waste is all electronic waste. And I think at distribution, we have a big role to play with and without vendor partners. I think logistics, whether it is warehousing, whether it is taking back a product from the channel, from the customer, and doing ethical disposal, recycling, refurbishing, clearly we can step up the game. And I believe we've done a little bit of early analysis and beginning to work on some pilots. There is profit to be made as well if you do it the right way. And I believe all of us and the vendors, we're not doing enough on that part of the game. And we're all so focused now on AI consuming a lot of power and a lot of water that we just veered away from our original thing. I believe there is all of us have 4 or 5 laptops at home, 10 phones at home. We don't even dispose it because we're scared of the data inside and where it'll land. Clearly, we need to step up, I believe, on this one and find a right way to get rid of this waste or recycle and reuse more if possible as well. And as the refresh cycle on Windows 10 to 11 steps up, similarly on non-AI to AI PCs, there will be a lot more PCs, a lot more mobile phones that will come back, and we need to do something about it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, honestly, we haven't had a panel in the last 2 years where we haven't had this topic on the agenda because it's an important topic. So, okay, with that, everybody, that's a wrap on our event.